Welcome back to another episode of the Packs What She Said podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Maggie Loney, joined as always by Perry Goldstein, and it is the instant reaction from the Packers beating the Colts in week 2, officially sitting at 1-1 in the standings. We just saw that the Lions lost, the Vikings won, the Bears won't play until later tonight. So as the NFC North shakes out, Perry, how are you feeling about Malik Willis and the Packers getting a win at home?
Wow. Really eked out a win there. I'm proud of this team. They did pretty much everything they needed to do in order to get a win with a backup quarterback. Malik Willis took what was in front of him, didn't try to do too much, didn't try to play hero ball, played clean football, really leaned on his playmakers, which is what we said in our preview show he needed to do. Defense took 3 turnovers away from Anthony Richardson, put Malik Willis in the offense in good field position, and except for a fumble by Josh Jacobs and a missed field goal, this game could have been a lot, if not for those things. This game could have been actually like a little bit more of a blowout than it was, ended up being a bit closer than I think fans were hoping for in the end, but pretty solid win from the backup quarterback and this team. So hats off to them. Hats off to everybody for playing, doing their 111th for number 2. And also just like great job from Matt LaFleur. Great game plan, great play calling, great job getting guys ready to play. Great job getting someone who's been in the building for 3 weeks ready to start for this team. So just a really nice, strong win to steal that with Jordan Love out.
Yeah, and I mean, for all accounts, we have no idea how long Jordan Love is out, right? They were playing with the idea of him playing this week. Obviously, that didn't happen. Didn't seem like it was going to happen. And now, the thought is maybe it's going to be a little bit longer than we had originally anticipated. It keeps kind of going back and forth. So knowing that you can get these wins with Malik Willis and kind of keep the ship afloat until Jordan Love comes back, it just means everything. And we talked about it with Dusty Evely kind of before this game, what the Packers would need to do to be successful. And they really did all of it. Got creative with their play calling, leaned on the run. And I think that was obviously the biggest key here. We saw the Texans put up 213 rushing yards against the Colts in week 1. And the Colts put up a ton of points. Like that was a back and forth slog, really lopsided time of possession. The Texans just drained the clock, and Packers replicated that really well in the heat at Lambeau Field. Just held on to the ball, didn't really make mistakes outside of the fumble in the end zone, and just pounded the ball, got that Colts defense really tired. Malik took some shots when he needed to, but did a really nice job protecting the football. Didn't, make too many mistakes, didn't try to put the team on his back, just played a really solid game for a new backup quarterback to this scheme.
I completely agree. I really did think like it's too obvious. They won't try to pound the rock. Like that's exactly what the Colts are expecting them to do. But I guess sometimes the obvious answer is the right answer, because even when they did expect the Packers to run the ball, they didn't have an answer for it, right? Josh Jacobs had 32 carries for 151 yards on the ground. Just a unbelievable stat line, quite frankly, but they got everyone involved on the ground game. They had a few designed runs for Malik Willis, but nothing too much. They had Jaden Reed involved on the ground for a few carries for 37 yards. Marshawn Lloyd got involved until he unfortunately left with an ankle injury. Emmanuel Wilson, Bo Melton. They really just, like you said, like really had a nice game plan, play call, mixed it up, but like leaned on the ground game because that was clearly the Colts' weakness. And especially in the first half, they had absolutely no answer for it. So why not keep doing that if it's A, working, B, draining the clock? Packers were up by 10 going into half. Naturally, the Colts came out in the second half and were able to kind of stuff the run a little bit better. And so they were forcing Malik to complete a few passes, which he did, right? He hit Romeo Doubs with the that big time throw towards the end of the game. He had Dontavian Wicks, he had Tucker Kraft. So he did what he needed to do in the passing game, but it just wasn't too much. It was just exactly what this offense needed. I would have liked to see them maybe capitalize a little bit more if they got further down, when they got further down, like closer to the end zone, but we're not going to be too picky with it. Again, if they don't fumble, if Josh Jacobs doesn't fumble and Braden Arvinson, doesn't miss the 45-yarder, this game is like in the bag very early.
Right. It's 26-10 at that point. And I think that if this is Jordan Love, Matt LaFleur calls a completely different game. So, everyone's like, oh, wow, this is super conservative. But I think that was the right move because we saw Anthony Richardson's got the arm to make every throw on the field. He's got the legs to pick up 4th and 11, as we saw, when he needs to. So being conservative, protecting the football, not making any big mistakes was what Matt LaFleur had to do. And we saw that. I mean, yes, the Packers fumbled in the end zone, but it was a really clean football game. Malik Willis didn't have any turnovers. That was kind of like his knock coming into this was, I think his career quarterback rating was like worse than what your QBR would be if you took a kneel every play. Like it just was not great. And I think he finished with like 120 or something like that. So really impressive from him. And something that stood out to me that I thought was just so fascinating was this is such a young offense that doesn't feel young. We're talking about 3rd and 2nd year receivers that play like vets, like Tucker Kraft having big moments, Dontavian Wicks and Romeo Doubs being like the guys for him in big moments. We're still a relatively young offensive line with like Zach Tom and Rasheed Walker, but Josh Jacobs, of course, has been around the league a long time, but they don't play like they're young,
Yeah.
And I think this offense looks different and this game turns out differently if Matt LaFleur doesn't trust those receiving players like explicitly. And I just thought that was really impressive to just know that those guys were going to go make plays for their quarterback.
100%. And I think we said that too in our preview show with Dusty. It was like you have to lean on your playmakers to go make plays. Have Malik Willis get the ball in the hands of the guys can take it to the yard if need be. Make it easy for him to get the ball into the hands of his playmakers. And he really did just that. It was obviously a heavy Josh Jacobs game, but I think if the Colts had been able to stop the run early, you would have seen a little bit more of the second half game plan in the first half of the game. More of the Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed mixed in there. It just happened to be that the run game was working and churning so well that if they can't stop that, why would you? I mean, we've seen the script flipped on the Packers in so many games past, right? In past seasons where when the Packers are getting gashed on the ground, why would the opposing offense do anything differently? Why would they change? And this time it just happened to the Packers offense who was like, why would we change that until we have to? And that's what they had to do in the second half.
And I think the Packers, and again, it's early in the season. We say this every year and then it cleans itself up, but a lot of like self-inflicted penalties. The Packers gave up 50 yards of penalties, 6 penalties, which I guess 6 over the grand scheme of 4 quarters doesn't sound terrible, but they came in big moments that could have been drive stalling. And that's just not what you want to see from a team that was already kind of playing behind the sticks with a backup quarterback. So that's something that they'll clean up, of course, but I don't think that you could have scripted it any better when it comes to time of possession. They had the ball for over 40 minutes, which is just insane. And even though the Colts put up 338 total net yards, they were up and down the field. It felt like a track meet, but they weren't able to score points. Obviously, the Evan Williams interception at the end of the game doesn't really count on a Hail Mary, but 3 picks is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all just things that you build off of. And that's why you brought in a guy like Xavier McKinney in free agency and why you brought in a guy like Josh Jacobs in free agency, because you trusted your additions to make plays in big moments, and they both did.
Yeah, so let's talk about the defense because they're a huge reason why the Packers won this game. I mean, you came into this game, kind of expecting a little bit of the Anthony Richardson big arm. You have Jonathan Taylor, who still got over 100 yards on the ground, as he will, of course. For whatever reason, he wasn't playing towards the end of the game. Not sure why. I'm sure we'll figure out why. Post game, they said in the broadcast it wasn't due to injury. So not sure why the pull there, but it's a choice. It's an interesting choice considering he was pretty much, the only thing that was working for the Colts. But you kind of think like, okay, well, game plan here is try to limit the big play from Anthony Richardson, because he is a big play wrapped up into a quarterback. And if you can capitalize on some of his inconsistencies, then you're probably going to get some big plays out of that. And that's exactly what the Packers did. We already mentioned, like you said, the Evan Williams might not count since it was on the Hail Mary, but the two main turnovers from Xavier McKinney and from Eric Wilson were on some not so great decisions from the quarterback, and there were mistakes from the Colts receivers, like lots of drops. Mitchell had a really tough game. I mean, he's a rookie, so fair enough, but really tough game. You just didn't get any kind of like rhythm from the Colts offense at all, except when Jonathan Taylor was running the ball. And if we're going to have a Malik Willis led Packers team for the next few weeks, which I think is what we're going to have at least next week, if not the week after, this defense is going to have to come up with these big plays for this offense, which they did. And capitalizing on it, whether it's 3 points, hopefully they turn into 7, as Malik Willis gets a little bit more comfortable in this offense, is going to be key for coming out of these games with wins.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it felt so different when you looked at both offenses on the field. And I really appreciated the broadcast. I think it was Greg Olsen specifically that said, like, there was no better place for Malik Willis to come than with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay and Tom Clemens. And they really did everything that they could to surround him with the best opportunity to be successful. They didn't ask him to run the Jordan Love offense that they had spent months and months building and prepping for the season. They spent all of this week making a Malik Willis offense and letting him operate that in the way that he was comfortable. And I'm not putting this on the Colts coaching staff or anything, but I do think that you could see the discomfort from Anthony Richardson and the trying to do too much and be too much. And that is the burden that's placed on you when you're a starting quarterback in the NFL and one that missed most of his rookie season. The youth and the inexperience, I think, was there, whereas Malik Willis had the opportunity to be a lot more comfortable because everything was just so tailored to him, and he didn't have to be the guy. He could be the guy, and we saw him be the guy with his legs and with some of his throws that he made, but a lot more comfortable for the Packers sideline.
No, 100%. This game gave me a little bit of like early Jordan Love in 2023 vibes for the Colts, where it's just like you can see that this offense has the pieces, right? You can see that their run game is really strong naturally with that, one of the best backs in the league. And obviously Anthony Richardson can use his legs. You can see the talent that he has, and he's just not quite developed all of it. You can see that he's not quite on the same page with his receivers when Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell and Mo Alley Cox and Michael Pittman Jr. And like, they have the talent. Mm-hmm. It's just like not, the puzzle pieces aren't there yet. And like, hopefully, if he plays a full season and the development is there and it all goes right, like I think the Colts can be a very good team. And Anthony Richardson is a really, really exciting quarterback. It just was giving me very like first half of the season of 2023 season Packers, where it's just like drops here and miscues there and like just like sailing like right behind, a receiver there. And, obviously to the Packers betterment, they got to capitalize on those things and win this game because of it. But, a few things go right for the Colts and this offense looks really good. They're just not, they're a half a season, I think, or a few games away from things like really clicking. And I hope that Anthony Richardson has the tools and the people in his camp in Indianapolis to help him get there, because I think he's a really exciting quarterback.
Yeah, I think that he just, cleans up a couple of those mechanics and the easy throws get a little bit easier. And we said that about Jordan Love. You're exactly right. Like the big throws don't look too big. It's the easy, simple stuff that you want them to clean up a little bit. And if that's your trait as a quarterback, like you'll take that 10 out of 10 times because it's so much easier to clean up the easy stuff than it is the hard stuff. And Anthony Richardson has the intangibles. So let's kind of go, I don't remember off the top of my head, maybe it's recency bias, but I don't think Malik Willis took a sack the entire game. Am I misremembering that?
He did not.
Okay, that's what I thought. So really impressive outing from the offensive line, and we were worried, right? DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, Buckner, of course, unfortunately leaving with the ankle injury. That always sucks to see, but we thought both of those guys maybe wouldn't play, and then they both ended up playing. Tyquan Lewis, always, stout on that line as well. So really nice performance from the O-line. I think just everybody played exactly how they needed to for the Packers to squeak this one out. And I hate saying squeak it out because it could have been 26-10, but with a backup quarterback, we said, hey, there's a chance they start 0-2, and we have to just see what that looks like. Can he do enough to keep him alive until Jordan Love gets back? And if they play like this again in Tennessee, that's a very, very winnable game.
I agree with you. I think the Titans are a not as difficult opponent as the Colts, and we will get there on our preview show, so stay tuned for that. But the prospect, like it's a completely viable and believable place to be. We are in a world where the Packers could go 2-0 without Jordan Love, and that is pretty remarkable. And again, you have to just give the coaching staff, obviously the players going out and executing, but like these kinds of wins are really on the coaching staff. And I just don't know how much more Matt LaFleur needs to do to get his recognition, because like, my God, you just won a game with Malik Willis, who got cut by the Titans. Like, he did not win the starting job, right?
Or the backup job.
Or the backup job. They're about to go. And like, again, we are going to talk about the Titans game later this week, and he just won a game, and it's truly remarkable. I want to do a few shout outs for some players who I think played really well in this game. So Devontae Wyatt got the only sack in this game against a guy who is very hard to get down. Anthony Richardson is a large tree of a man. Love to see Wyatt finally finishing plays. We saw a lot of him getting quarterback hits and pressures last season, but never finishing out the sack, and he finished out the sack today. So big shout out to him. Carrington Valentine getting put into the game as the boundary corner starting in the second quarter, and like really just taking it and not giving it up the rest of the game. Curious to see what the choice, the reason for that choice. Was it they just saw the opponent and they liked that matchup better, or if there's something up with Eric Stokes? I'm hoping someone in the beat asks this question, but regardless, Valentine had a really nice game, had a great PBU, and, probably saved a huge play. So shout out to Valentine in his new number. Those are the two guys I think on that side of the ball that I thought had really nice games.
I will also just mention Eric Wilson.
Yes.
I adore him, and I've been so high on him all training camp. And Isaiah McDuffie, too, I thought played really well. And I think just we're seeing a lot more attacking from the inside linebacking core. We saw Quay come in on the blitz with Devontae Wyatt that put all that pressure on Anthony Richardson. So he threw the ball up, and that was the Xavier McKinney pick. And I know that Quay didn't necessarily have the best game, and he would tell you he didn't think he had the best game either, I'm sure. But we've just seen a lot of athleticism from these inside linebackers. Isaiah McDuffie was in a really good position to cover Jonathan Taylor on a wheel route, and I think it would have stopped him short of the sticks if it was a completed pass. So things that, we weren't excited about last week, seeing Isaiah McDuffie on a wheel route covering Saquon Barkley, cleaned up. I thought that they played really well just as an entire unit. And I think the communication on the defensive side of the ball was really, really clean today as well. We saw them all getting into position, and I don't know if that's the pieces that are out there or, what necessarily goes into that. Probably playing at home has something to do with it, but I thought anytime you keep an offense that has this kind of firepower to 10 points, you have to be excited about that.
I agree with you. The last guy I will say something about is LVN. I think just the more he plays, the more I like what I'm seeing. I think he looks way more comfortable with his hand in the dirt. He's starting to just really execute on his assignment and it just feels like he is more comfortable just doing what he's being asked right now. I don't know if that makes any sense, but when I watch him, I'm like, you don't look confused. You look like you know exactly what you're being asked to do right now, and you're going and you're doing it, and you're starting to see the plays coming. It's not necessarily like super flashy. He had a tackle for a loss and he was getting in there right in this game, but I think we're going to start seeing more as he gets more comfortable in this defense, and especially as Devonte Wyatt and Kenny and Rashawn and Preston all also feel confident in executing their assignments as well. So I tweeted this out, but I'm buying LVN stock in this defense.
Yeah, and I think that the tough draw of having Jalen Hurts and then Anthony Richardson to start your season is really rough for a defensive front in a brand new scheme transitioning to a 4-3 with a new defensive coordinator. So when they get to play Will Levis and a not as great Tennessee offensive line, and down the line, Sam Darnold, not a mobile quarterback. So like some of the games coming up, I really want to see the edge rush and the pressure get home because they've been so close. But when you're playing Jalen Hurts and when you're playing Anthony Richardson, those guys are going to save the day with their legs because that's what they do. And unfortunately for the Titans, like that's not Will Levis. And unfortunately for the Vikings, that's not Sam Darnold. So that's where I think that this Packers pass rush has done enough, clearly, to stay in these games and to win this game. But I'm ready to see them get to tee off and really get home against a quarterback that does not make superhero plays with his legs.
I agree with you. Anybody on offense you want to shout out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the obvious answer is Josh Jacobs. Just we've been waiting to see what he would look like in green and gold, and we saw glimpses in the second half of the Brazil game, obviously against the Eagles, but that game just felt really lopsided with the poor field conditions, and we weren't kind of sure. And then today, he really just set the tone, and it was like a track meet. Just really good at kind of shaking off a first defender and picking up extra yards. Honestly, the whole running back room looked like a lot of fun today. Emmanuel Wilson made some plays. Marshawn Lloyd made some plays. Unfortunate that he now is dealing with an ankle injury. You hate to see that after he missed so much of the preseason, but really strong day for the running backs.
Yeah. This run game is going to be fun. Really fun. They not took a gamble, but 2023 Josh Jacobs was, not 2022 Josh Jacobs. They took a mini gamble on bringing him in, hoping that he was the guy that they saw the season previous. And so far, he's looking, as advertised, super fun, rumbling. And I think when you get a chance to rotate in some of the other guys that the Packers have in that room and give him a bit of a break and like keep his legs fresh, that's just like only to his advantage and to the disadvantage of his opponents.
I mean, we're certainly not expecting him to get 30 touches every single game, but out of necessity, he kind of did, especially poor guy in like 85-degree heat at Lambeau, which is so unheard of. He comes to Green Bay and is like, finally, some nice weather, and he has to play in this weather. But yeah, really, really fun day for him. And I think the usual suspects, like I thought Jaden Reed had a really good game. Romeo Doubs, obviously, I thought that he remains to me like the security blanket of the offense, where like if you need a tough third down, he's the guy. And I think that he kind of, showed that with the 40-yarder. It was nice to see Malik get to open it up with his arm, but Romeo is not going to be denied that ball.
Hands. No, he is becoming a little bit of everybody's security blanket, and this offense needs that guy. Greg Olsen shouted out Tucker Kraft, and I do want to talk a little bit about what's happening with the tight ends before we move on. It's very clear going into this season that Tucker Kraft is tight end one. Luke Musgrave had one catch, but was otherwise very quiet in this game. And that could be for a number of reasons, right? That could be because, Jordan's not playing, but snap counts will come out. They haven't come out since we started recording, I don't believe. But it's just from the eye test. 85 is out there way more than 88. And I think it's just clear that Tucker is just a much better blocker. He's in on every big run play, every screen, right? Every end around, every jet sweep. Like Tucker is making like a very key block. And I just think that he's the well-rounded tight end that when they drafted him, everyone kind of expected him to become. It just took him a little bit longer to develop into that. But he's such a linchpin in this like Matt LaFleur offense. And I just, that's obviously why that he's on the field. It feels like almost every play or every key play, every big chunk play, it feels like it's because Tucker Kraft is making an important block.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, I want to see more 12 personnel, and I feel like we haven't gotten a ton of that. It's been a lot of 11 with your wide receivers, even, I guess a little bit of 12, but I think that Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft have the opportunity to make each other better. And unfortunately, I think we just haven't seen enough of them out there at the same time because Tucker Kraft is getting the nod. And I think it's deserved. I think he does get the nod for the way that he's been playing, but I would love to see Luke Musgrave get some opportunities like on seam balls and the things that we expected him to do out of college, because I think that's where he'll really shine, especially when you've got like Christian Watson and Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave becomes like the forgotten man in the middle of the offense. Like I think all these guys are going to get their fair share, but yeah, the initial snap counts have been very surprising to see coming out of these first 2 games.
For sure. And I think it potentially is one of those problems where there's too many guys to get the ball to.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to watch the way this shakes out over the course of the rest of the season.
Yeah. So I guess we should talk about special teams a little bit. Daniel Whelan deserves a game ball. Phenomenal punting, which is such a weird talking point. But we had said for Malik Willis, he needs to rely on the other 2 phases of the game. And special teams really did him a solid. Like Daniel Whelan set the Packers defense up with great field position all game. Anthony Richardson having to go 95 yards in that final drive. You couldn't have asked for better from him, to pin it and not get it into the end zone. I still believe in Braden Arvison. I thought he had a really nice game, and his misses are very minor misses compared to what we've been seeing. I think he cleans those things up. I know the joke is that 45 is kind of his kryptonite at this point, but he was hitting 60-yarders in warm-ups, so a lot to like. I think the Packers, have a really reliable kicker right now, which is something we didn't think that we would have 2 weeks ago. So,
no. I think the bar is low and he has exceeded it. So we'll take it. I also I hope in the future he's just mainly kicking only extra points and like not as many field goals.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, you don't want him to miss anything. But if what you're missing is in the 40 plus range and that's it, then yeah, a few of those are going to go wide. And that's just like the name of the game. But yeah, I agree with you. Daniel Whelan deserves a game ball. Really flip the field and put the Packers defense in a really good position to make some stops, especially at the end of the game where things were starting to get a little dicey. You and I were messaging like, it's a little too close for comfort right now. Like it feels okay, but I don't love it because Anthony Richardson has a huge arm and like he can do the Hail Mary. So if Daniel Whelan, 5-10 yards makes a huge difference on that punt, right? So good to see Rich Bisaccia's special teams unit come into this season and look a lot better than in seasons past. A lot better.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. So any final thoughts before we wrap this one up and turn our attention to week 3 already? Packers sitting at 1-1, right in the middle of the NFC North with a lot of football left to be played.
A lot of football left to be played. Tied right now with the Lions, which is, I think, who we all have our eyes on the moment as the biggest rival for the top. I know the Vikings are sitting at 2-0, but I'm waiting for the Ghosts to get to Sam Darnold this season. Although I do appreciate them taking down the 49ers. I will
Shout
take
out,
49ers.
thank you.
Shout out. Yeah, I do appreciate a 49ers loss any day of the year. We'll see what happens with the Bears tonight as we were recording this Sunday right after the game. We have not seen the Bears play yet. So a lot to shake out, but any win with your backup quarterback is a huge, massive, massive, massive success. So I think before the game started, we heard that Jordan is poised to come back sooner rather than later, which is always great news. So like I said earlier in the episode, if you can potentially go 2-0 in this Titans game as well. Without Jordan, you have set yourselves up for massive success for this season. So I'm immensely proud of what those guys did out on the field. We called 17-13. We were not that far off in our score predictions, which we are almost always wrong. So
I had the 20s. I thought it was going to be high scoring. So
Dusty and I said 17-14, 17-13, and we were almost spot on. So I'm going to take that win also. And just a great team win.
Yeah, couldn't be happier for Malik Willis to come into the situation with all of the pressure on his back and all of the naysayers and, the backup role having to come in and just to play the way that he did was really special for him. And then he gets to go play against the team that let him go next week, the team that drafted him and released him. So should be a really interesting storyline there as well if Jordan can't go. But what a game. Everything you'd want. Malik Willis ran a really great offense with no mistakes. The Packers defense kept a really, a potentially strong Colts offense to 10 points. Special teams looked really good when they were out there. So yeah, couldn't be better. And it's a home opener at Lambeau. I think they won the last 12 in a row. So it's like 13 in a row for home openers. And the second highest streak is 3 in a row. So the Packers really have a cushion there when it comes to home openers. But thank you, as always, for listening to this show. We're going to wrap this one up and enjoy Victory Monday tomorrow. We'll be back later in the week to talk about Packers Titans. I almost said Packers Texans. That's later. You can find the show on Twitter at PWSS Podcast, Perry at Perry_Goldstein, me and Maggie J. Loney. You can find us on Spotify. Please support the show if you love what we're doing. On YouTube, please like and subscribe. That helps out our numbers tremendously. And we'll be back. Enjoy this one, guys. The Packers are 1-1. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.